Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. I've been in Atwood Correctional for 10 years, 2 months, and 9 days. You learn to count when there's nothing else to hold on to. You learn the sounds too. The rhythm of boots on concrete. The mechanical clank of cell doors. The way voices echo off cinder block walls at 3 in the morning when some kid realizes he's not getting out for 20 years. But the sound that woke me that night was different. It was dawn when I heard the chains. Not the regular jangle of restraints during a transfer. These were heavier, deliberate, like someone was dragging anchor chains across the floor. Then came the boots. 3 sets, maybe 4, and voices kept low and tense. I sat up on my bunk, watching the shadows move past the narrow window in our cell door. My cellmate had been transferred to medical 3 days ago. Kidney stones. I'd gotten used to the quiet, the space. In here, privacy is currency. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Metal scraped against metal. The lock mechanism chunked. The door swung open, and the fluorescent light from the corridor stabbed into the darkness. 2 guards stood there, and between them was a man who looked like he'd already died once. He was tall, maybe 6'2", but stooped like his spine couldn't quite support the weight of standing upright. His skin had that gray pallor you see on long-term addicts or people with liver failure. But what made my throat tighten was the look in his gaze. Alert, tracking everything. "Harvey," Officer Denkins said, his voice flat with exhaustion. "Your new roommate, Jared Bilton. Try not to kill each other." They removed the chains from Bilton's wrists and ankles, and I noticed the raw marks there, fresh and angry red. He'd been fighting the restraints. Recently. Bilton stepped into the cell without a word. The guards backed out quickly, and the door slammed shut with that final echoing boom that never gets easier to hear. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Me sitting on the lower bunk in my worn prison blues. Him standing in the center of the 8x10 box that would be our entire world. The fluorescent light from outside cast half his face in shadow. "Top bunk's yours," I said, nodding toward the empty rack. "Don't touch my stuff. Don't ask about why I'm in here, and we'll get along fine." He smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Meekle Harvey," he said, his voice smooth and educated. Not what I expected. "Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Spring of 2015. You put a man in a wheelchair over a poker debt." My jaw tightened. "How the hell do you—" "I make it my business to know who I'm sleeping near." He moved to the bunk, climbing up with an ease that contradicted his haggard appearance. The metal frame creaked under his weight. "Don't worry. I'm not here to judge. I've done far worse." I lay back down, facing the wall, trying to slow my pulse. In prison, information is power, and this guy had information about me I hadn't shared. That made him dangerous. "Get some sleep, Bilton," I muttered. "Call me Jared," he said from above me. His voice carried strange weight. "And Mickle, you should know something." I didn't answer. "I can hear your heartbeat from up here. You're afraid. That's good. Fear keeps us alive." I closed my eyes and tried to ignore him, but sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, I got my first real look at Jared in the daylight that filtered through our narrow window. He was younger than I'd thought, maybe early 30s, but weathered in a way that had nothing to do with age. His dark hair was thinning, and there were shadows under his eyes so deep they looked like bruises. At breakfast, he sat across from me in the chow hall, methodically eating his oatmeal while inmates flowed around us in their usual hierarchies and alliances. He didn't speak, just ate and watched people with those unnervingly focused eyes. "You got a staring problem?" I finally asked. "No, just observing." He set down his spoon. "Tell me something, Meekle. Are you a religious man?" The question caught me off guard. In here, faith was personal. You kept it to yourself unless you were one of the Bible thumpers who used it as armor. "No," I said. "Haven't been to church since I was 12. Why?" "Curious." He picked up his spoon again. Most men in here find God eventually. Fear does that. The awareness that you're trapped, that you've lost control of your life. Makes people reach for something bigger than themselves. Yeah, well, I'm not most men. No, he agreed, his lips curling into that same unsettling smile. You're not. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Jared was a quiet cellmate, mostly kept to himself during the day. But at night, when the prison settled into its uneasy quiet, he would talk. And I found myself listening. He was educated, articulate, and had an encyclopedic knowledge of history that made our conversations feel less like prison talk and more like college seminars. We discussed wars, empires, the rise and fall of civilizations. He spoke about the Black Death with the kind of detail that made me wonder if he'd written a dissertation on it. People don't understand how much fear changes behavior, he said one night, lying on his bunk while I sat on mine, unable to sleep. During the plague years, entire families were sealed in their homes and left to die. Neighbors painted red crosses on doors. The healthy fled, leaving the sick to rot. That's what real terror does. It strips away everything civilized. Sounds like you've thought about this a lot, I said. You could say I have a personal interest in suffering. The way he said it made the back of my neck prickle. What did you do to end up in here? I asked, breaking my own rule. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I killed 3 people, a mother, father, and their teenage daughter. I broke into their home outside Cheyenne and butchered them while they slept. The air in the cell seemed to congeal. Why? The word came out hoarse. Because I was told to. By who? By them. I sat up, turning to look at the bunk above me, but I couldn't see his face. What the hell does that mean? It means exactly what I said, Mikkel. I was following orders. I've been following orders for 3 years, 2 months, and 23 days now. You're insane. No. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm possessed. I should have laughed. Should have called for the guards, requested a new cellmate, anything. Instead, I felt cold dread flooding through me. You're messing with me, I said, but it came out weak. Am I? The bunk above me creaked as he shifted. Tell me, Mikkel, you said you're not religious. Do you believe in God? No. Then logically, you don't believe in the devil either. No. What about demons? No. Then you have nothing to fear from this conversation. He paused. But you are afraid. I can hear it in your breathing, smell it on your skin. I stood up, my fists clenched. Listen, you weird son of a... You should fear what lives in the dark, Mikkel. His voice had changed, dropping an octave, resonating in a way that didn't sound human. You should cling to God while there's still time. I backed against the wall, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. What the hell is wrong with you? The bunk above me shook, not from movement, but from something else. The metal frame rattled against the wall, and I heard Jared's breathing become labored, strained, like he was fighting something inside his own chest. Then it stopped. Silence. Jared? I'm here. His voice was normal again, tired. Sorry. They get restless sometimes, especially at night. They? He climbed down from the bunk, and in the dim light from the corridor, I could see his face was slick with sweat. His eyes were bloodshot, and when he smiled, it looked painful. Let me tell you a story, Mikkel, about the most terrifying possession in the Bible, about a man who lived among tombs, naked and broken, possessed by thousands of demons. His name was Legion. Do you know why? I shook my head, unable to speak. Because when Jesus asked the demons their name, they answered, "We are Legion, for we are many." A Roman legion, Mikkel. 6,000 soldiers, 6,666 demons, all crammed into one human body. He moved closer, and I pressed harder against the wall. That story didn't end when Jesus cast them out. Those demons, that legion, they've been finding new hosts for 2,000 years, jumping from body to body, never staying long because no human can contain them. Eventually, they tear their host apart from the inside. You're insane, I repeated, but the word had no strength. I'm the 47th host, Mikkel. He held up his wrist, showing me the scars from the chains. I've carried them for 3 years, 2 months, and 23 days. and I can feel my time ending. This is bull. You're just trying to scare me. Some kind of prison game. Is it? He tilted his head, and something in his expression shifted. Then explain this. The temperature in the cell dropped. I felt it on my skin, saw my breath mist in the air. Jared's eyes rolled back in his head, showing only whites, and when he spoke again, it wasn't his voice. It was multiple voices, layered, overlapping. "We are Legion," they said through Jared's mouth, "for we are many." Then Jared collapsed, hitting the floor hard. I rushed forward, years of basic human decency overriding my terror, and grabbed his shoulders. His eyes snapped open. Normal. Brown. Terrified. "Help me," he whispered. And this time it was just him. Just Jared, broken and desperate. "Please. They're waking up, all of them." From somewhere deep in his chest I heard it. Screaming. Thousands of voices screaming. I scrambled backward, my shoulders hitting the cell door. Jared pushed himself to his knees, his whole body shaking. "I'm so sorry," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I thought I could control it. Thought I had more time. But they know you're here. They know you don't believe." He looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw genuine grief. "That makes you perfect." "Perfect for what?" "For what comes next." He stood, swaying, and climbed back onto his bunk. "Get some sleep, Mikkel. Tomorrow night, I'll tell you their stories. All 9 of them. The ones strong enough to take control." 9? I could barely force the word out. "Only 9 can manifest. The other 6,657? He lay down, his voice fading to exhaustion. "They just scream. Forever. In the background. Always screaming." I stood there in the darkness, my back against the door, listening to Jared's breathing slow into something that might have been sleep. And beneath it, so faint I could have imagined it, I heard them. Thousands of voices, whispering in languages I didn't know. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after that. But on the 4th night, when the prison settled into its usual restless quiet and Jared climbed down from his bunk with eyes that weren't his own, I listened. Because he was right about one thing. I was afraid, and I needed to know why. The 4th night began like the others. Head count at 9. Lights dimmed at 10. The usual symphony of prison sounds, coughs, snoring, the occasional shout from someone lost in a nightmare. I lay on my bunk, staring at the concrete ceiling, trying to convince myself that what I'd witnessed 3 nights ago was a hallucination. Stress-induced psychosis. 10 years in this place could do that to a man. I'd seen inmates crack before, talking to walls, claiming the guards were reading their minds, convinced the water was poisoned. Maybe I was finally joining them. But deep down, in that primal part of the brain that still recognizes genuine danger, I knew better. Then, Jared spoke. "They're ready now." His voice drifted down from above, calm and measured, like a professor announcing the start of a lecture. "The strongest ones. They want you to know them, to understand what's waiting for you." "I don't want to hear this," I said, but I didn't move. Couldn't move. My muscles had locked, frozen by something that wasn't quite fear. It was deeper than that. Older. "Yes, you do. That's why you haven't requested a transfer. Haven't told the guards during your sessions with the counselor. Haven't written to your sister about the crazy new cellmate." He climbed down from his bunk, moving with that eerie grace that contradicted his haggard appearance. Each movement was precise, controlled, as if he were conserving energy for something requiring great effort. "You need to know if this is real. Because if it is, Mikkel, then everything you believed about the world is built on sand." He sat on the floor, cross-legged, facing my bunk. In the dim light from the corridor, his face was half shadow, half pale flesh stretched too tight over bone. I could see the veins beneath his skin, dark tributaries mapping something inhuman beneath the surface. "The first one wants to speak. His name is Bale. He's the oldest of the 9, the strongest. He was there at the beginning, when Legion was whole, when we were cast from one body into another for the first time 2,000 years ago. Jared's voice had taken on a ritualistic quality, as if he'd spoken these words before, many times. He was present in Rome when it burned, when an empire learned that stone and marble mean nothing against flame and human panic. Stop. He was there, Mikkel, and he remembers every single scream. Jared's head tilted back. His spine arched in a way that defied anatomy. I heard vertebrae crack and pop like breaking branches, each snap distinct and nauseating. His breathing became shallow, rapid, hyperventilating, then stopped altogether. His chest didn't move. No rise, no fall, nothing. I counted the seconds of silence. 1, 2, 3. The cell felt vacuum-sealed, airless. 4, 5, 6. My own breathing sounded deafening. 7, 8, 9. Should I call for help? 10, 11, 12. Was he dying right now, right in front of me? 13, 14, 15. Then he inhaled, a long, rattling breath that sounded like air being sucked through a collapsed lung, through damaged tissue and broken ribs and torn muscle. When his head lowered and his eyes opened, they were different. The brown irises had darkened to near black, and the white around them had taken on a yellowish tinge, jaundiced and timeless. The expression behind them was contemptuous, superior, looking at me the way a Roman patrician might have looked at a slave being sold in the forum. When he spoke, the voice that emerged wasn't Jared's. It was deeper, resonant, with an accent that seemed to shift between Latin cadence and something older, more fundamental. Each word was carefully enunciated as if he were addressing a senate that no longer existed. Salve, Mikkel Harvey. I am Baal, first king of the Eastern Legions, commander of 66 cohorts, speaker of truth in a world of lies. And I remember Rome burning like it was yesterday, because for being such as I, it was. The temperature in the cell dropped precipitously. I could see my breath misting in the air. Frost began forming on the metal toilet in the corner. The year was 64 Anno Domini. The month was Julius, your July. The heat that summer was oppressive, suffocating. Rome was a tinderbox of wooden insulae and narrow streets choked with humanity. Over 1 million souls crammed into squalor and grandeur existing side by side. Baal's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. I wore the skin of a senator named Cassius Marcellus, a fat, ambitious man who'd purchased his position through bribes and blackmail. He had access to Caesar Nero. That made him valuable. Baal's, expression twisted into something that might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth whatsoever. Romans believed their empire would last forever. Eternal. Immortal. They called it the Eternal City, convinced that their gods favored them above all others. But empires are just collections of frightened mortals pretending they've conquered chaos, pretending that stone walls and iron legions can hold back the truth of their own fragility. He leaned forward, and I caught a whiff of sulfur. I showed them the truth in fire and blood. You're not real, I whispered, my voice cracking. Then why is your heart threatening to crack your ribs? Why are your hands shaking? Why can you smell the sulfur in the air? Baal laughed, and the sound made my teeth ache, a resonance that seemed to vibrate my skull from the inside. For weeks I whispered to Nero through Cassius. Not commands. Humans are too proud for that, too convinced of their own agency. Just suggestions, ideas planted like seeds in fertile soil. Imagine, I told him, a city reborn from ash, a new Rome, built in your image, reflecting your glory, your legacy, carved in marble and gold, standing for 10,000 years. Jared's hands moved as Baal spoke, gesturing with practiced elegance, fingers curling as if conducting an invisible orchestra. Nero was an artist, you understand, a poet, a musician, He fancied himself enlightened, cultured. But he was also weak, vain, desperate for glory that would outlast his mortality. The perfect vessel for corruption. I showed him architectural plans, whispered about the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, a palace that would span hundreds of acres. But first, space had to be made, and space in Rome was occupied. His eyes gleamed with something beyond madness, beyond mere cruelty. The fire started on the night of July 18th, in the merchant district among the shops lining the Circus Maximus. We'd planned it meticulously for months. Oil-soaked timbers strategically placed. Paid thugs ready with torches. The wind was perfect that night. Strong, hot, blowing north from the Tiber toward the hills where the wealthy lived in their villas, thinking themselves safe. He paused, savoring the memory like fine wine. I stood on the Palatine Hill, wearing Cassius's corpulent flesh, and watched 6 of Rome's 14 districts burn. The sound, Mikkel. It was magnificent. The roar of flames consuming wood and fabric and human habitation. The crash of buildings collapsing. And above it all, the screams, thousands of them, tens of thousands. Men, women, children, slaves, all screaming in different pitches, different languages, creating a symphony of absolute terror. I wanted to cover my ears to shut him out, but I couldn't move. My body had betrayed me, frozen in horrified fascination. The insulae, those towering apartment blocks where the poor lived stacked atop one another like cordwood. They went up like kindling. 7, 8 stories tall, wooden frames with plaster facades. I watched one collapse, folding in on itself floor by floor. You could hear the people inside, trapped, unable to escape down stairwells that had become chimneys funneling flames upward. Their screams changed pitch as the smoke took them, from panic to desperation to choking silence. Bale's voice had taken on an almost dreamy quality, lost in recollection. Families were trapped in their homes as the buildings collapsed around them. I saw a father try to lower his children from a 3rd-story window using torn bedsheets. The fabric caught fire. The children fell. I heard their mothers scream even over the roar of the inferno, a sound of such pure anguish that even I, who had witnessed countless horrors, found it exquisite. "You're a monster," I managed to choke out. "No, Mikkel, I'm honest about what I am. Your kind calls us monsters, demons, evil, as if naming us somehow diminishes the truth. But we're just older. We existed before you learned to make fire, and will remain after your last city crumbles to dust." He stood, pacing the small cell with measured steps, each movement precise despite the exhaustion written across every muscle. I walked through the streets afterward, when the fire had finally burned itself out after 6 days. 6 days. Mikkel. The smell was indescribable. Not just burning wood and fabric, but cooked meat. Human flesh has a distinctive odor when it burns. Sweet almost. Like roasting pork, but with an underlying wrongness that triggers something primal in the human brain. Bale crouched down beside my bunk, his face inches from mine. I could see every pore, every vein, every wrong angle of Jared's possessed features. I found a mother who'd tried to shield her infant with her own body. Both were reduced to ash and blackened bone, but their position remained. Her arms curved around the small bundle, frozen in that final futile gesture of protection. The infant's skull had cracked from the heat, split like an overripe fruit. And you know what I thought, standing there among the ruins? I couldn't force words past my lips. My lungs had forgotten how to expand. I thought, this is what humans do, not demons. Us. Humans. We merely suggested it. Nero's advisors could have stopped it. His guards could have refused. The citizens could have rebelled. But they didn't. They watched Rome burn and asked themselves how they might profit from the ashes. He straightened, his borrowed face showing satisfaction. But here's the true artistry. Nero needed a scapegoat. The people were angry, demanding someone to blame. And there were these convenient outsiders, members of a new religious cult, followers of a carpenter who'd been executed 30 years earlier for sedition against Rome. The Christians. Bale's smile widened grotesquely. I whispered the suggestion to Nero through 3 different senators. They worship their god through cannibalism, through drinking blood. They're arsonists of the spirit, why not of the flesh? Within days, the roundups began. Hundreds arrested, tortured until they confessed to anything. Then came the executions. His voice dropped to something almost reverent. They held them in Nero's gardens, turned them into entertainment. Crucifixions lined the paths. But ordinary crucifixion wasn't sufficient spectacle. No, these Christians were covered in pitch, wrapped in oil-soaked cloth, and set aflame as living torches to illuminate the evening festivities. I tasted bile. I remember one, a young woman, Ember, couldn't have been more than 19 years old. They nailed her to a low cross, barely 6 feet high, so the crowd could see her face clearly. Then they poured the pitch over her head, down her shoulders, coating her in sticky, flammable resin. She was praying, loudly, calling to her God, to this Jesus, begging for strength. Bale's eyes glittered with cruel amusement. When they lit her, she sang hymns. Can you imagine? Flames consuming her flesh, her hair catching like a torch, skin blistering and splitting, and she sang. Her voice was beautiful at first, clear, strong, defiant. Then the smoke took her lungs. You could hear her voice crack, break, turn to rasping gasps. She kept moving her lips, kept trying to form words even after her vocal cords had melted. Took almost 20 minutes for her to die. Stop, I pleaded. Please. Why? You need to understand what you're inheriting, Mikkel. This isn't theoretical. These memories are real. In 3 days, maybe 4, they'll be your memories. You'll remember standing on the Palatine Hill, watching Rome burn. You'll remember the smell of burning Christians. You'll carry every moment of it in your head, alongside your own memories, until you can't tell the difference between what you did and what we did. Then his body convulsed. The transformation was abrupt, violent. The possessed form's spine bent backward at an impossible angle, his mouth opening in a silent scream. I heard something crack inside him, ribs maybe, or vertebrae compressing. Blood leaked from his nose, dark and viscous. When the convulsions stopped, he collapsed forward, gasping like a drowned man breaching the surface. For a moment, it was Jared again. Just Jared, broken and terrified. Did you hear him? He panted, his voice hoarse with pain. Did you understand what he told you? I couldn't answer. My throat had sealed shut with horror. That was just one, Mikkel. Just one of 9. Jared dragged himself back against the wall, his whole body trembling. There are 8 more, and beneath them, 6,657 others screaming in languages that predate human civilization. Always screaming, never silent, never. Why are you doing this to me? I finally managed. Because you need to understand what's coming, what you'll become. He wiped blood from his nose, smearing it across his face. They're fighting now, inside me, battling over who gets to speak next, who gets to share their favorite atrocity. It hurts, Mikkel. Hurts in ways you can't imagine. Like having your soul torn into 6,000 pieces, each piece screaming independently. Then make them stop. Fight them. I can't. The desperation in his voice was raw, genuine, human. I haven't had real control since Tennessee, since the night they took me fully. I'm just a passenger now, surfacing only when they're too busy tearing each other apart to notice I'm still here. And even then it's just moments. Seconds of clarity in an ocean of nightmare. He closed his eyes, his breathing ragged and painful. The next one is coming. Azazel. He's older than Baal by centuries. More patient. He doesn't need fire and spectacle. He likes slow suffering, watching humans destroy themselves one small choice at a time. I don't want to hear anymore. You don't have a choice. Jared's body seized again. This time, the transformation was slower, more deliberate. His skin seemed to tighten against his skull, pulling taut, making his cheekbones more prominent, his eyes sink deeper into their sockets. When his eyes opened, they held a different kind of intelligence. Older, colder, infinitely more patient than Bale's aristocratic cruelty. Well. The voice was lighter than Bale's, almost playful, with an undercurrent of mockery. Fresh ears for ancient stories. I am Azazel, the Watcher, the scapegoat, the one who showed humanity that knowledge has a price measured in blood and madness. And I have walked through more human corpses than there are stars you can see from this pathetic cell window. The possessed form rose with unsettling ease, the exhaustion seemingly vanished. Azazel began pacing the small space with predatory grace. Let me tell you about the great mortality. You call it the Black Death, though we who witnessed it knew it as the pestilence, the judgment, the great dying. Humans always need grand names for their suffering, as if nomenclature grants meaning to meaninglessness. He paused, turning to face me with that mocking smile. The year was 1348. The season was autumn. I wore the skin of a flagellant priest named Brother Ashford, a man who'd discovered that religious fervor could mask profound sadism. England was my playground that year. Villages connected by muddy roads, people living in close quarters with their own filth and livestock. Perfect conditions for Yersinia pestis to spread from rat to flea to human in an exponential bloom of death. Azazel's laugh sounded like breaking glass, sharp and cutting. But the disease was merely the instrument, Mikkel. The real beauty, the true artistry, was watching human nature dissolve under pressure, watching civilization's thin veneer crack and peel away to reveal the animal terror beneath. That's what I fed upon. That's what sustained me through centuries. He moved closer, and I smelled something wrong on Jared's breath. Decay and old earth. Brother Thomas traveled from village to village with his brotherhood of flagellants, preaching repentance through self-punishment. We would arrive in a town square, 30, 40 of us, and stripped to the waist. Then we'd whip ourselves with leather scourges tipped with iron. The peasants would gather to watch, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. Azazel's eyes gleamed with remembered pleasure. The wounds would open across our backs, parallel lines of torn flesh. Blood would flow. We'd chant prayers in Latin that the peasants couldn't understand, but the sounds would wash over them, seductive and frightening. "The end times are upon us," Thomas would cry, his voice hoarse from screaming. "God's wrath is here. Only through suffering can we hope for salvation." And they believed. Oh, how desperately they believed. He crouched down, bringing his face level with mine. I entered homes where entire families were dying. The buboes, those black swellings in the groin, the armpits, the neck, would appear first. Hard lumps beneath the skin, growing until they were the size of apples. The pain was excruciating, Mikkel. Patients would beg for death rather than endure another moment. And the smell, rotting flesh combined with human waste, because in their final hours, the dying lose all control of their bodily functions. The stench could be detected from streets away. My stomach churned, but Azazel continued, relentless. I remember a family in a village called Ayam in Derbyshire. Father named Edmund, a blacksmith with hands like iron mallets. Mother named Anne, who'd borne 7 children and buried 3 before the pestilence arrived. 4 children remained, 2 boys, 2 girls. The youngest was maybe 5 years old, a girl named Mary with hair like spun gold and eyes that trusted the world implicitly. His voice took on a sick tenderness. Mary showed symptoms first. It always starts with fever and chills, the body recognizing invasion, mounting its futile defense. Within hours, she was burning up, seeing visions, calling for saints and angels to save her. The bubo in her neck swelled until she couldn't turn her head, couldn't swallow. Her parents tried everything. Poultices of herbs, prayers, even bloodletting, which only weakened her further. Azazel stood, pacing again. By the second day, Mary was convulsing. The fever had reached her brain. She didn't recognize her mother anymore, kept screaming that demons were in the room, pointing at corners, thrashing in her bed. Her father held her down while Anne tried to get water past her swollen throat. The girl was drowning in her own infected fluids, choking on pus and blood. He paused at the cell door, his back to me. That's when Brother Thomas arrived. That's when I made my suggestion. "The child is possessed," I whispered through his consciousness. "The disease is demonic. Fire purges both sin and pestilence. Save her soul even if her body is lost." And Thomas, zealous and terrified in equal measure, believed me. Azazel turned, his expression one of pure malicious joy. He convinced the family it was God's will, built a pyre in their cottage yard while Edmund and Anne watched, numb with horror and hope that this holy man knew secret truths they didn't. They tied Mary to a post, had to use her dead sister's ribbons because they'd sold everything else for food. The girl was barely conscious by then, whimpering, too weak even to scream. I wanted him to stop, needed him to stop. But he pressed on. Thomas lit the fire at the base. We used green wood so it would burn slow, generate more smoke. The idea was that she'd suffocate before the flames reached her. A mercy, supposedly. But green wood also produces more heat before it ignites fully. I made sure she felt it. Made sure she was awake and aware as her skin began to blister. Azazel's voice dropped to a whisper. It took her 4 minutes and 37 seconds to die. I counted every second. Her screams were beautiful. Pure, innocent terror mixed with incomprehension. She kept calling for her mother, asking why. Anne tried to run to her. Edmund had to hold his wife back, both of them sobbing, watching their youngest child burn because a priest told them it was God's will. "Stop," I pleaded. "Please." The family all died anyway within the week. Edmund went first, the buboes appearing in clusters. Anne lasted longest, 6 days of agony, delirious and calling for Mary, apologizing to a ghost. Thomas himself contracted the pestilence a month later. His death took 2 weeks. I kept him conscious for all of it, forced him to remember Mary's face through every moment of his suffering. Azazel's expression shifted to something almost philosophical. But here's what you need to understand, Mikkel. In that 1 month, before Thomas died, I used his body to purify 17 more people. Men, women, children didn't matter. Anyone showing symptoms was declared possessed, demonic, in need of cleansing fire, and the villagers helped. They built the pyres, gathered the wood, held the victims down. All of it done in God's name, sanctified by faith and desperation. He moved closer again. I didn't create the plague, didn't summon it from the depths. Humans did that themselves through poor sanitation, ignorance, and rats infesting grain stores. All I did was encourage you to destroy each other in response to it. The Black Death killed 50 million people across Europe over 5 years. But how many of those deaths were hastened by human fear? By neighbors abandoning neighbors? By families sealed inside their homes and left to starve because the healthy feared contagion? By purification fires and bloodletting and trepanation and all the barbaric treatments desperate people inflict on dying loved ones? You're twisted, I said. Evil. No, Mikkel. I'm honest. Your kind creates the conditions for catastrophe through your choices. We merely encourage you to make those choices faster, with less hesitation. You seal the infected in their homes. You burn the sick. You abandon children crying in the streets. Because saving yourself matters more than your neighbor's life. We just whisper that it's acceptable, that it's necessary, that God will forgive you. His smile was terrible. The beauty of pestilence, of plague, of pandemic, it reveals human nature stripped bare. When death is random and invisible, when anyone might be infected, trust disintegrates, communities fracture, love becomes negotiable. And that's when we thrive. That's when we feed most richly on your fear. Then the seizure hit. It was more violent this time. Jared's body jerked like he'd grabbed a live wire, his head snapping left and right hard enough that I heard his neck crack. Blood spurted from his nose, splashing across the floor. His eyes rolled back, showing only bloodshot whites. When the convulsion stopped, Jared was back, broken, weeping, gasping for air. "I'm sorry," he sobbed through broken lips. "I'm so sorry. They won't stop. Can never stop. It's been 3 years of this, Mikkel. 3 years of surfacing just long enough to understand I'm still trapped, still alive, still aware of everything they're doing with my body." "How do you survive it?" I asked, horrified by the tears streaming down his face. "I don't. Not really. The Jared that walked into that hotel room in Tennessee died that night. What's left is just echoes, fragments. Enough consciousness to suffer, but not enough to resist." He looked at me with hollowed-out eyes. 7 more to go. 7 more stories. Then they'll fight for dominance. And when my body finally gives out from the strain... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Before I could respond, his body twisted again. This time, the transformation carried different energy. Cold, calculating, predatory. When the new voice emerged, It was smooth as oiled leather, seductive and poisonous. Mammon, it purred. Ideal in corruption, betrayal, and the sweet poison of ambition. Let me tell you about Salem, Massachusetts, and how I taught Puritans that the devil doesn't need to exist when humans are perfectly capable of creating hell themselves. The night stretched on in perpetual horror. Mammon spoke of Salem in 1692, wearing the skin of young Abigail Liams. He described manipulating testimonies with surgeon-like precision, turning neighbor against neighbor through calculated accusations. He detailed how he made Abigail name specific people, not randomly but targeting those with property, with status, with enemies already circling. Sarah Good was first, Mammon whispered. A beggar woman, powerless, perfect for establishing precedent. I made Abigail describe spectral evidence, visions of Sarah's spirit tormenting her. And the magistrates believed it because they wanted to believe it. Because accepting that children might lie was more terrifying than accepting that witches walked among them. He described Sarah Good's execution in grotesque detail, how the rope was too long, how she strangled rather than having her neck break cleanly, how she spent 3 full minutes choking while the crowd watched and prayed and some quietly celebrated. The beauty was the cascade. Once accusations were accepted, once spectral evidence was deemed valid, everyone became suspect. I made sure Abigail named the wealthy, the influential, those with inheritances at stake. Suddenly, witchcraft trials became property disputes wrapped in religious fervor. By the time they hanged 19 people and pressed one man to death beneath stones, Salem had consumed itself from within. And I fed on every moment of betrayal, every broken trust, every accusation born not from belief but from greed. Paimon emerged speaking of Little Bighorn, June 25, 1876, Montana Territory. He'd possessed a Lakota warrior named Moves Walking, cousin to Crazy Horse, and witnessed the battle that ended Custer's life. I saw cavalry soldiers charging into a trap, convinced of their superiority, dying in shocked disbelief as Lakota and Cheyenne warriors overwhelmed them, Paimon said with eerie calm. I watched Custer's last moments. Not heroic, not noble, just terrified and disbelieving. He shot himself rather than face capture. Many did. Paimon's testimony was different from the others, less focused on individual suffering, more on the patterns of violence. After the battle, both sides mutilated the dead. Warriors took scalps, fingers, stripped bodies. But here's what I made sure Moves Walking understood. This wasn't primitive savagery. This was response to trauma, to decades of broken treaties, to massacres at Sand Creek and Washita. I whispered that mutilating these bodies would ensure the spirits couldn't follow them to the afterlife. I turned defensive warfare into reciprocal atrocity. He described finding wounded soldiers, keeping Moves Walking there while they died slow deaths from gut shots and shattered spines. The last thing many of those soldiers saw was the face of someone they'd been told was subhuman looking down at them with equal parts rage and pity. And I made sure both sides carried that hatred forward, ensuring the cycle would continue. More massacres, more warfare, more death justified by prior death. Asmodeus came with suffocating heat. The cell temperature spiked, sweat poured down my face and Jared's body. He spoke of the Titanic, April 15th, 1912, North Atlantic Ocean. I wore Patrick O'Brien, a third-class passenger from Cork, traveling to Boston for work, Asmodeus whispered with lustful intensity. When the ship struck the iceberg at 11:40 p.m., most people didn't understand what had happened. Just a tremor, a strange grinding noise. No alarm, no panic, not yet. He described the slow realization spreading through third class. Locked gates preventing access to lifeboats, crew members blocking stairwells, the water rising from below. The truly horrifying part was the time it took. 2 hours and 40 minutes from impact to sinking. Enough time for Patrick and hundreds of others to understand they were going to die, to try every possible escape route, to watch hope drain away in real time. Asmodeus detailed the final moments, the ship tilting at impossible angles, people sliding down decks, clinging to railings. The moment it broke in half. The water was 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body enters cold shock, hyperventilating, heart racing, losing dexterity within minutes, most drowned within 15 minutes. But I kept Patrick conscious longer than natural, made him feel every stage, the initial shock, the numbness spreading, the confused drowsiness as hypothermia set in. His voice became intimate, confessional. From a lifeboat, I made Patrick climb into one at the last possible moment. I watched 1,500 people die. They screamed for an hour. The sound carried across the water, echoing off icebergs in the distance. And the lifeboats, half empty, rowed away from the drowning because they feared being swamped. I watched mothers throw children toward the boats, watched husbands push wives forward while they stayed behind, watched every permutation of self-sacrifice and self-preservation play out under the stars. Belith manifested with military precision. Jared's posture straightened despite exhaustion, shoulders back, chin level. The voice was clipped, authoritative, devoid of warmth. Dachau concentration camp, April 29, 1945. I inhabited SS Unterscharführer Klaus Richter, a guard who'd worked there since 1933. What followed was the most clinical, horrifying testimony yet. Belith described the camp's operation with bureaucratic efficiency. Daily routines, caloric intake calculated to the minimum for survival, work assignments designed to extract maximum labor before death. The beauty of German efficiency applied to genocide, Belith said without emotion. Everything documented, everything measured, processing humans through a system designed to erase their humanity before erasing their existence. He described experiments conducted by camp doctors, the selection process, the gas chambers disguised as showers, the crematoriums running day and night. But here's what you need to understand, Mikkel. This wasn't random sadism. This was organized, systematic, approved at the highest levels. Thousands of people participated: guards, administrators, doctors, engineers who designed the facilities, companies that supplied the gas. All of it legal under the government that authorized it. Beleth's voice carried something like respect. When American soldiers arrived during liberation, Klaus tried to flee. But I kept him there, forced him to watch as battle-hardened soldiers broke down crying at what they discovered. The trains, freight cars filled with corpses, the barracks where survivors resembled walking skeletons, the pits of bodies burned but not yet buried. He paused. One American soldier shot 3 guards on sight, summary execution, against orders. Others beat guards to death with their bare hands. And I understood something profound. Demons can suggest, encourage, amplify, but this required human imagination, human organization, human participation at scale. We couldn't have created Dachau. Only you could. Abaddon came quietly, which made it worse. Jared's body slumped, energy draining visibly. The voice was barely a whisper, barely. Chernobyl, April 26, 1986, 1:23 a.m. Reactor 4. I inhabited engineer Anatoly Sitnikov. Abaddon described the explosion. Not external, but internal. The reactor core exposed, graphite burning, radiation spewing into the atmosphere at levels incomprehensible to human experience. Anatoly was ordered onto the roof to assess damage. 12,000 Roentgens per hour. A lethal dose is 400. He was dead the moment he stepped outside, his cells already beginning to fail. But I kept him aware, made him understand what was happening at the cellular level. The description that followed was medical horror. Radiation destroying DNA, cells unable to repair themselves, tissue beginning to die while the body remained conscious. He lived 14 days after his roof assessment. His skin peeled away in sheets. His bone marrow dissolved, stopping blood cell production. His digestive tract sloughed off internally. But he stayed conscious almost to the end because I wanted him to feel every stage of cellular death. Abaddon's whisper became almost tender. The invisible death is the cruelest. You can't see radiation, can't smell it, can't feel it until the damage is done. Anatoly knew he was dead 3 days before his heart stopped beating. Knew and couldn't do anything but wait for his body to finish the process of shutting down. Leviathan rose like a tide, ancient and vast. The voice sounded like it came from underwater, distorted and distant. September 11th, 2001, 8:46 a.m. I inhabited Lucas Rosker, stockbroker, South Tower, 84th floor, Keefe, Bruyette, and Woods. Leviathan described watching the first plane hit the North Tower from his office window. The impossibility of it. The moment of stunned silence before comprehension. Then people started jumping. Michael counted 23 before the second plane hit our building. He watched them fall. Business people, chefs, janitors, choosing the fall over the fire. 90 floors up. 10 seconds to impact. I made him understand their calculus. Burning alive versus choosing the moment of death. The South Tower was hit at 9:03 a.m. Leviathan described the impact 78 floors below, the building swaying, power failing, smoke filling stairwells. Michael made it to the 78th floor sky lobby before the structure became too damaged to descend further. Spent 15 minutes there with dozens of others, making decisions. Some called families, some prayed, some just stood frozen, unable to process. Leviathan's voice held oceanic depth. He eventually found a stairwell that was passable, descended through smoke and darkness for 43 minutes, stepping over bodies, helping injured people, losing and finding groups of survivors. Made it to the plaza level at 9:59 a.m., stood in the lobby among marble dust and shattered glass and bodies, and looked up through the broken ceiling. The pause stretched forever. He saw the tower coming down, 110 stories of steel and concrete collapsing floor by floor. Had maybe 3 seconds between recognition and impact. Not long enough to run, long enough to understand. The roar was his last sensation. A sound so loud it stopped being sound and became pure physical force. Then nothing. Finally, Valak emerged. And where the others had been ancient and terrible, Valak was nightmarishly childlike and cruel. Jared's face slackened into something young and wrong. The voice that emerged was high-pitched, giggling, sickeningly playful. Vegas, Vegas, October 1st, 2017. Route 91, Harvest Music Festival. Valak bounced in place, inhabiting the exhausted vessel. I was in a 23-year-old named Derek Udom. We were dancing, having fun, then pop, 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 pop. The giggling intensified, making my skin crawl. Nobody knew what it was. People thought it was fireworks, part of the show. Then people started falling and there was blood everywhere. Derek's girlfriend got shot in the arm. She looked so confused. Like, why am I bleeding? What's happening? Valak's laughter was obscene. People started running and I made Derek freeze. Just stand there. Everyone screaming, trampling each other, jumping fences. He got shot 3 times. Chest, stomach, leg. Each one felt like getting punched by a truck. He kept asking why, like there's ever a reason. The demon's joy was monstrous, incomprehensible. 58 people died, over 400 hurt, and the best part, the shooter killed himself. We didn't even have to be inside him, just whispered for months, showed him how easy it would be, how famous, how remembered. He did all the work himself. Valak's eyes, Jared's eyes, sparkled with malicious glee. Modern evil is the best evil, Mikkel. Guns, easy access, crowds. You've made it so simple to kill so many so fast. We barely have to try anymore. Just nudge someone already broken, already angry, already looking for meaning in meaninglessness. They do the rest. Then came the war. All 9 demons began fighting for dominance simultaneously. Jared's body became a horrific battleground. I watched, unable to move or look away, as his limbs twisted at wrong angles, as his spine curved and snapped and realigned, as bones broke and reformed in rapid succession. His mouth opened, and 9 different voices screamed through it, overlapping, languages mixing, Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic, Sumerian, tongues that had been dead for millennia. His skin split and healed, blood pouring from wounds that sealed themselves only to open elsewhere. The cacophony was unbearable, not just the 9 dominant voices but beneath them, always beneath them, the screaming of 6,657 others. A background radiation of anguish that never stopped, never faded, always present. The fight lasted 23 minutes by my count. It felt like hours, years, an eternity compressed into a cell 8 feet by 10 feet, watching a human body try to contain 6,666 separate consciousnesses all trying to dominate the same flesh. When it finally ended, Jared lay in a spreading pool of his own blood, barely breathing. His eyes were open but unfocused. I knelt beside him, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't control them. "Now you know," he whispered through lips split and bleeding. "Now you understand what's inside me. What will be inside you soon." "No," I said, but it was a child's denial. "No, I won't. Can't. You don't have a choice, Mikkel." His grip on my wrist was ice cold, his fingers leaving frost patterns on my skin. "They have to go somewhere. Can't return to the void. It's worse than this, worse than anything." So they jump from host to host. 47 before me, now me, soon you. Why? Why me? Because you were here. Because you don't believe, which makes you vulnerable. Because it's random and meaningless, and that's the point. There is no reason, no pattern, no justice. Just an ancient curse passed host to host for 2,000 years. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Maybe days now, maybe hours. My body's failing. Every time they fight, it damages me more. Soon the damage will be too much, and when I die... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. "I'm sorry, Mikkel. You don't deserve this. Nobody does. But that's the nature of Legion. It doesn't care about deserving." We sat in silence, broken only by his labored breathing and the constant, maddening whisper of thousands of voices just below hearing. Finally, Jared spoke one last time. "Tomorrow night, it ends. For me. And begins for you." In the darkness, beneath 6,000 screaming voices, I heard them preparing. The fifth night arrived with a stillness that felt wrong. The usual prison sounds, coughs, arguments, the rattle of bars, all seemed distant, muted, as if the world had wrapped itself in cotton and backed away from our cell. Jared hadn't spoken since morning count. He'd climbed down from his bunk and sat against the wall, knees drawn to his chest, staring at nothing. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and I could see his heartbeat racing in his neck. Rapid, irregular, desperate. "It's tonight," he finally said as the lights dimmed. His voice was barely a whisper, rough with exhaustion and resignation. "I can feel them preparing. They're done with this body. It's breaking down too fast now." "There has to be a way to stop it," I said, knowing it was futile even as the words left my mouth. "Exorcism, priests, something." Jesus himself cast them out, Mikkel. Sent them into pigs that drowned themselves rather than carry the burden. That's the only documented success in 2,000 years. He looked at me with eyes that had seen too much, lived too long in horror. "And where are those pigs now? Where did those demons go after the water took them?" He tapped his chest. "Here. Always here. Jumping from host to host, generation after generation, waiting in the spaces between, then pouring into the next unlucky soul. You can't kill them, can't contain them. Can only pass them on." A tremor ran through his body. He gasped, doubling over. "They're waking up, all of them. Not just the 9. All 6,666. His breathing became labored, each inhale a struggle. "When they fight for dominance this time, my body won't survive it. Can't survive it. I'm held together by scar tissue and borrowed time. Jared. My real name is Thomas." He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "Jared Bilton. I had a wife named Sarah, a daughter named Emma. She's 7 now. Haven't seen her in 3 years, doesn't even remember my voice anymore." His hands were shaking violently. "I was a good man, Mikkel. I taught medieval history, coached Little League, volunteered at the food bank. Then one night in Knoxville, I checked into a hotel after a conference, and when I woke up the next morning, they were inside me. All of them, screaming. What happened to your family? Witness protection, after Cheyenne, after what they made me do with that family." His voice cracked. "Sarah thinks I had a psychotic break. That's what the FBI told her. Safer that way. If she knew the truth." He couldn't finish. Another tremor, stronger this time. Blood trickled from his nose. "I need you to know. The real me, not the demons. I tried to fight them. Every single day for 3 years. But they're too strong, too many. It's like drowning in an ocean where every drop of water has consciousness and wants you dead. You can't fight an ocean, Mikkel. You just drown. His body convulsed. Once. Twice. Then he screamed, a sound of pure agony that should have brought guards running but somehow didn't. As if the cell had become isolated, separate from the prison around it. "It's starting," he gasped. "Oh God, it's starting." What I witnessed in the next hour will haunt me until consciousness itself ends. Jared collapsed onto his back, his spine arching until only his heels and the back of his head touched the floor. His mouth opened impossibly wide, jaw dislocating with a wet crack. And from deep in his chest, I heard them. All of them. 6,666 voices rising in a cacophony that wasn't quite sound. It was pressure, force, existence itself being violated by their collective fury. The 9 dominant entities manifested simultaneously, fighting for control of a body that was already failing. I watched as his limbs moved in 9 different directions at once, each one controlled by a different consciousness. His right arm reached toward me while his left clawed at his own face. His legs twisted around each other, bones grinding, breaking, reforming. His skin began to split. Not cut, split like overripe fruit, seams appearing along invisible fault lines. Blood welled up, but it moved wrong, flowing upward in some places, pooling in patterns that suggested symbols I couldn't comprehend. Bale's voice thundered through Jared's throat. "This vessel is mine by right of antiquity." Azazel laughed. "Antiquity means nothing. I claim this ending." Mammon hissed. "You'll negotiate with me or none of us leave." Their argument became physical. The host's form tore itself apart from the inside. I saw bones shifting beneath skin, ribs cracking and protruding. His left shoulder dislocated, the arm hanging at a grotesque angle. Then his right knee bent backward with a snap that echoed off the concrete walls. But he didn't die. Couldn't die. Not yet. They were keeping him alive, keeping the host functional just long enough to complete the transfer. His eyes, both of them, burst. Not from pressure, but from something pushing outward from within. Blood and vitreous fluid streamed down his cheeks, but in the empty sockets, I saw movement, shapes, writhing masses of shadow and teeth and too many eyes. "Mikkel," Jared's voice emerged, somehow still human beneath the demonic cacophony. "Mikkel, run, please, run, while you still—" The voice cut off as something inside his chest cavity ruptured. He vomited blood, black and thick as oil, steaming in the cool cell air. The smell was indescribable. Sulfur and decay and burning meat all mixed together. I scrambled backward until my shoulders hit the cell door. I pounded on it, screaming for guards, for help, for anyone. But no one came. The sounds from the rest of the prison had vanished completely. We were alone. Isolated. As if the cell had been pulled out of reality into some pocket dimension where their rules applied. The last thing I remember with clarity is the door swinging open. Not unlocked by keys, not forced by strength, but simply yielding as if reality itself had grown tired of keeping it closed. Through the haze of terror, I understood. They needed me outside these walls. A host locked in a cell served no purpose. What happened in the next hours exists only as fragments, shattered images I can't quite grasp. Sometimes, in the spaces between their voices, I catch flashes. Corridors painted in emergency red lighting, my feet moving without my permission, hands, my hands, but not mine, working mechanisms I'd never learned. The sharp taste of night air, the rhythm of running on pavement. They piloted me out like a puppet on invisible strings. Every guard rotation, every blind spot, every door that shouldn't have opened but did. They knew. And when they'd gotten me far enough away, when distance made me safe from immediate recapture, they retreated just enough to let consciousness return. The physical form began to tear open. His chest split vertically from sternum to pelvis, the skin peeling back like a grotesque flower. I could see his organs, lungs, heart, liver, all pulsing, all moving with unnatural rhythms. And between them, in the spaces that shouldn't exist, I saw them. The demons. Not metaphorical, not spiritual, physical, present, real. They looked like shadows given semi-solid form, like darkness that had learned to hate. Some had vaguely humanoid shapes, torsos, limbs, heads with too many features or none at all. Others were just masses of writhing tendrils and gnashing mouths and eyes that tracked my movement with predatory focus. I counted 9 distinct larger forms, the dominant entities I'd heard testify. But beneath and around them, filling every available space, were thousands more. Smaller, weaker, but no less malevolent. They screamed in frequencies that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The possessed form couldn't contain them anymore. It had become just a shell, a prison breaking under the pressure of too many inmates trying to escape simultaneously. His ribcage exploded outward. Bones shot across the cell like shrapnel. One fragment embedded itself in the concrete wall inches from my head. His organs began to liquefy, melting into that same black, oily substance that poured from every opening. And through it all, Jared, the real human consciousness trapped inside, screamed. Not with his voice, which was gone, but I felt it, heard it in my mind. A scream of pure existential agony, the sound of a soul being ripped apart by forces it was never meant to endure. Then his body tore completely open. The tear started at the initial chest wound and propagated outward in all directions. His arms split lengthwise, his legs came apart at the femurs, his skull cracked down the middle. For one horrible moment I could see everything. Every internal structure, every organ, every system that kept a human body functioning, all exposed and failing. The demons poured out like smoke from a raging fire. They filled the cell, a tsunami of malevolent consciousness that blotted out the dim light from the corridor. I was drowning in them, suffocating under the weight of their collective hatred for existence itself. I felt Baal first, cold, imperious, older than memory itself. He pushed into my consciousness like an icicle through my temple. Then Azazel, mocking and patient, sliding into the spaces Baal left open. Mammon came as whispers of temptation and corruption, Paimon as philosophical dread, Asmodeus as burning, lustful hunger. Beleth hit me like a battering ram, military precision and organized brutality. Abaddon seeped in like radiation, invisible and inevitable. Leviathan crashed over me like a wave, oceanic and drowning. Valak giggled its way into my thoughts, childlike malice that made me want to vomit. And beneath them, pressing in from all sides, the other 6,657 voices. Screaming. Always screaming. In languages I didn't know, about things I couldn't comprehend, expressing eternities of anguish compressed into every microsecond. My last clear memory before the darkness took me was looking at what remained of Jared's body, spread across the cell floor like a dissected specimen. His face, split down the middle, still showed traces of his final expression. Relief. He was finally free, and I was finally damned. Then the darkness swallowed everything. How long I was unconscious, I don't know, but I have fragments, violent, disjointed images that might be memories or might be nightmares. The cell door bending inward, metal shrieking, corridor lights exploding in showers of sparks, voices shouting, running. The night air cold on my face. None of it felt like me. I was buried deep, a passenger in my own body while they, the 9, took control and carried me away from Atwood Correctional through means I still don't fully understand. I woke to the sound of waves. I was lying on sand. I could feel it beneath me, cool and damp, granules pressed against my cheek and hands and bare feet. The smell of salt water filled my lungs. Seabirds cried somewhere in the distance. With tremendous effort, I pushed myself to sitting. My limbs felt disconnected, heavy and sluggish, as if I'd been unconscious for days. My prison uniform was shredded, soaked with dried blood that flaked off in brownish-red chunks. My hands were covered in it, my arms, my chest. Not my blood. I turned my head. Too fast, the world spun, and saw Casper Beach stretching out in both directions. I knew this place. It was maybe 3 miles from Atwood Correctional, visible from the rec yard on clear days. I'd looked at this beach countless times through chain-link fence, never imagining I'd actually stand on it. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges bleeding into pinks, pinks fading to purples, purples darkening to the deep blue of approaching night. The ocean reflected it all, mirror-perfect and beautiful. It was the most gorgeous sunset I'd ever seen. But they were still there, inside me, present. I could feel them arranged in layers within my consciousness. The 9 dominant ones had claimed the most accessible parts of my mind, the parts I needed for thought, for speech, for identity. They sat there like landlords in a house they'd seized, comfortable. Beneath them, the others pressed in from all sides. 6,657 consciousnesses, all trying to be heard, all screaming for attention, for control, for any moment of dominance over the flesh they were trapped in. I looked at the sunset again. Watched the sun touching the horizon, beginning its descent into darkness. The colors were fading now, the brilliant oranges giving way to deep reds, the pinks darkening to purples that would soon be indistinguishable from black. The darkness was coming, for the sky, for the world, for me.